If you look at the entirety of Anakin Skywalker's life, some patterns begin to emerge. Here is a boy who is constantly driven by his emotions and love. He slaughters that entire village of Tusken Raiders after they torture his mother to death. He betrays the entire Republic and the Jedi Order for a small chance that he might be able to save his love, Padme. And then he goes on to betray that Empire and Palpatine in order to save his son, who he hardly even knew. Anakin is very relatable in this way. I always felt like his intentions were pure. He never pursued power just for power's sake. He never chose to be violent because he liked violence. It was really his fear of losing his loved ones that drove him to do most of the things he did. Now, I've mentioned 3 important individuals in Anakin's life. Now I want to talk about 2 others. One is Obi-Wan Kenobi, his former master, who's like a brother to him. Unfortunately, the dark side clouded Anakin's judgment and convinced him that Obi-Wan was trying to take Padme away from him. The second individual is Ahsoka Tano, the Padawan that Yoda forced onto Anakin during the Battle of Christophsis. You see, once a Jedi becomes a knight, they're given the option of taking on a Padawan, and there's like a whole procedure with this. All of the younglings have like these trials and tests where they fight against each other, and the Jedi Knights get to watch and choose which one they want to have as their apprentice. But during the Clone Wars, Padawans were simply appointed because everyone was too busy fighting on the front. And I think this was a really positive kind of thing for Anakin. You see, the only thing that really separates a child from an adult is not their age or wealth or their job or even intelligence. It's really just about how much responsibility you're willing to take on. Being in a relationship with someone is a responsibility. Owning a pet is also a responsibility. And so is training your own Padawan. Living a life that's not just for yourself is truly what's meaningful. You know, some people will spend their entire lives pursuing things that are more self-focused, like money or a profession. Maybe you have a dream house, a dream car, and there's really nothing wrong with that. But if that's the only thing you really focus on, you'll get to a point when you realize how shallow it is to just do things for oneself. And you'll find that true happiness really does come from building community and serving others. And so when Ahsoka came to Christophsis, suddenly Anakin wasn't just focused on himself. He had to take care of another living being. And although he was kind of unhappy about this idea initially...
What? No. There must be some mistake. He's the one who wanted the Padawan.
But eventually, Anakin would not only embrace Ahsoka Tano, he would go above and beyond to make sure she was prepared for almost every kind of situation she would encounter. He was an excellent Jedi Master. When every other Jedi Padawan had to pass a lightsaber competency test, Anakin Skywalker was not happy with the results. Not because Ahsoka's performance was bad, but because...
It's a lousy test.
But it's what every Jedi does.
Exactly. Look, you want a real test?
Name it.
Okay, I'll make you an actual test, and then we'll see what you really learn.
Anakin proceeds to give Ahsoka a new challenge. He surrounds her with clones who then begin firing stun rounds at her. I actually did a short about this a while back, and the Ahsoka groupies really hated me for my take. Look, it doesn't really matter if Ahsoka does the same exact move in practice that she will use one day to survive Order 66. Stunning a teenager a dozen times will cause nerve damage and probably brain injuries that will only surface when she's older. Plus, which battle droids use stun rounds? But anyway, this isn't about whether Anakin's training tactics are stupid or not. They're completely stupid. But at the same time, he's putting a lot of effort into this training, which I can really respect. Anakin not only accepts responsibility over his Padawan, he develops a true affection for the young girl. He most likely saw himself not as necessarily a father figure, but like an older brother to Ahsoka. In moments of crisis, like the one Anakin faced when it was revealed that his old pal Palpatine was a Sith Lord, it's oftentimes much better to be surrounded by those who you trust, so that when your emotions are leading you to dangerous places and destructive behavior, they can be the voice of reason which walks you back from the ledge. I've always believed that Ahsoka Tano is actually that person for Anakin. And that's because Ahsoka exhibits many of the traits that Anakin has, and the two have mutual respect for one another because of this. But they also recognize their own weaknesses in each other. Our ego really protects us from acknowledging many of the flaws that we have, but when we see our own flaws in others, well, that's a work around the ego that allows us to have a little more self-awareness. I think Anakin and Ahsoka were perfect for one another, and I think one of the biggest tragedies for Anakin is losing Ahsoka after she was framed for the Jedi Temple bombing. I don't think Darth Sidious was directly involved in having Barriss Offee frame Ahsoka, but holy crap, the damage that this does is tremendous. So in today's video, we're going to be doing what if Ahsoka Tano never left the Jedi Temple? What if she stayed right by Anakin's side all the way until Order 66? Well, before we get there, a quick word from our sponsor for today's video, ownersaber.com. They are the premier lightsaber sellers on this side of the galactic barrier. I am required by law to state that no Jedi younglings were harmed or Order 66 in the production of these lightsabers. Better yet, all of these lightsabers are 40% off right now, plus free shipping. Ownersaber.com has lightsabers of all shapes and designs, from more simple ones like the Copper Claw, gotta love the finish there, to the lightsaber of Cal Kestis, the Chaos, which was actually originally his master's lightsaber. You can even see the carbon scoring from when he was gunned down during Order 66. Or you could grab something like this, the Black Moon, a perfect replica of the Mandalorian Darksaber, which also happens to be my go-to when I turn the lights off and run around my room in my underwear screaming like a badass warrior. Check out this lightsaber and many more at ownersaber.com. I'll link their website in the description below. Also, you guys can use my promo EWOK, that's all caps, for an additional $15 off. Thank you for your patience. On to the rest of the video. So what happens if Ahsoka never gets framed? Well, the next mission Ahsoka would have been on with Anakin would be the Battle of Ringo Vinda, when Tup executes Jedi General Tipley. I don't remember which one he shot. Now, Ahsoka would have probably felt bad for Tup in this situation. Earlier during the war, she and Barriss Offee were both infected with Geonosian brainworms, which were capable of mind control. But more importantly, Ahsoka would have been alongside Anakin as he goes through this very difficult period of time. I mean, the last year of the war was seriously hell for him. Soon after Ringo Vinda, the situation with Russ Clovis and the banking clans would emerge. Padme Amidala, who had a previous relationship with Clovis, would be appointed by Chancellor Palpatine to investigate the Senator's relationship with the Separatists. And Anakin is less than happy about this. First, he's kind of jealous about Clovis and Padme's special relationship, and then he's also worried about his wife's safety.
The Chancellor has asked me to do this, Anakin.
But I'm asking you to say no. As your husband, I demand that you tell the Chancellor you are stepping down.
I mean, moments like this were clearly orchestrated by Palpatine to create more confusion and anger in Anakin's life. Couples fight all the time, but to seek control over the other's behavior, that is a sign of something darker. But again, this incident would have never occurred without Palpatine ordering Padme to go on this investigation in the first place. Now, who does Anakin have to talk about this with? It's just Obi-Wan Kenobi. And this scene kind of plays out exactly like how you would expect it to, with Anakin playing with his toys and ignoring the conversation like a child, and Kenobi acting like a stern father.
It's not that we're not allowed to have these feelings, it's natural.
Senator Amidala and I are simply friends.
And friends you must remain.
Now, what if Ahsoka Tano were in this situation? She would have witnessed Anakin's clear admiration for Padme, and as a close friend of Padme, she also would have picked up upon the clear jealousy that Anakin was displaying here. But unlike Obi-Wan Kenobi, Ahsoka Tano was not necessarily a rule follower. She was a lot like Anakin. She always walked her own path even before she was kicked out of the Jedi Temple. I mean, do you remember when the Malevolence destroyed Plo Koon's ship? While all the other Jedi were calling for caution, Ahsoka was just focused on saving her friend.
Wait! Just because there haven't been any survivors before doesn't mean there won't be any this time.
She wears her heart on her sleeve just like Anakin, and that's that mutual trust that I talked about, which creates this really inseparable bond between these two individuals. I think Ahsoka would serve as a good mediator in a fight between Anakin and Padme. She understands why Sky Guy's feelings might be hurt, but she also understands Padme's willingness to do her duty. Instead of taking Obi-Wan Kenobi's approach, where he just tells Anakin to stop falling in love because you're not allowed to do that, Ahsoka could help Anakin see Padme's point of view and why his attempts to control her are out of line. She could also point out that what Padme is doing here is no more dangerous than what Anakin gets involved in on a daily basis on the front lines of the Clone Wars. Moreover, when advice comes from someone who you're supposed to mentor, the dynamics are completely different than when an authoritarian figure who has control over you tries to tell you to do something. Now, one of the reasons why Ahsoka Tano is on Mandalore when Order 66 occurs is because she's directly recruited by Bo-Katan Kryze for the operation. Now, why did Bo-Katan invite Ahsoka Tano instead of someone like Obi-Wan Kenobi? Well, it's because Bo saw a kindred spirit in Ahsoka after she left the Jedi Order. Remember, Bo-Katan had also escaped her own organization, the Death Watch, before truly developing her own identity and goals. Moreover, the person they were going up against, Maul, had also left his own organization as well. And so in this situation, if Ahsoka Tano never leaves the Jedi Order, I don't think Bo-Katan would be as comfortable reaching out to her because they don't have that shared quality of being outcasts. And so that would put Ahsoka Tano right next to Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin when the news of the Battle of Coruscant reaches them. Ahsoka would have been there during the orbital battle and dogfight. She would have made it to the duel with Count Dooku on his command ship. And I really don't think Dooku would have stood a chance against these three, but I also believe that Ahsoka would have probably prevented Anakin from executing Count Dooku. Or perhaps Darth Sidious would have been less inclined to use his Sith powers to convince Anakin to do this because Ahsoka is also present.
Do it.
Ahsoka, in a lot of ways, is like Anakin's guardian angel. The Jedi were always bluntly trying to get Anakin to obey them. Ahsoka Tano, on the other hand, always tried to explain the world to Anakin. She respected her master, and she was also aware of his deficiencies.
Master, you can make it, but everyone else is getting shot down.
They were colleagues, they were also competitors, and more importantly, they were friends, and they would be willing to lay down their lives for one another. I mean, just compare these two to your typical Jedi pairing like Luminara Unduli and Barriss Offee. When the weapons factory on Geonosis collapsed on top of these two Padawan, Luminara was completely prepared to give up on her apprentice.
We need to act now! Ahsoka and Barriss may still be alive down there.
There's not enough time. I sense them drifting away.
Seriously, this kind of nonsense from Luminara really pisses me off. While everyone else is working their asses to save these Padawan who just heroically leveled the factory on top of themselves, making the entire offensive successful, Luminara is just sitting there talking about some esoteric Force mumbo jumbo. Instead of, I don't know, using the Force to lift all that debris off of your Padawan? Fuck the Jedi, fuck Luminara. No wonder your Padawan turned out to be a terrorist, and I laughed my ass off when the Inquisitors use your corpse as bait post Order 66. Sorry, I know that's uncalled for, but I just really hate Luminara. Like, she's talking philosophy and stuff while literally the youngling she's in charge of is dying because of a lack of oxygen. I need to make another video about this so I can vent. After the Battle of Coruscant, Anakin was assigned with spying on Chancellor Palpatine. This was after Palpatine assigned Anakin as his representative to the High Council in the Jedi Order. As a Padawan, Ahsoka Tano would be by Anakin's side during this time period, and we already kind of know what Ahsoka thinks about the Jedi ordering Anakin to spy on Palpatine. During the Siege of Mandalore, Obi-Wan Kenobi has a private talk with Ahsoka on this matter.
They told him to spy on the Supreme Chancellor? Why?
The Senate has allowed the Supreme Chancellor to remain in office long after his term has expired. The Council wants to know what his true intentions are.
Now remember, in this scene, Ahsoka Tano is still kind of pissed at the Jedi Council for what happened to her during the Temple bombing. But it's not just about that. She's mature enough to be able to get rid of her own biases and be objective here. What she's really worried about is the fact that she knows that Anakin has a really close relationship with Palpatine, and she wants to be protective of her master.
The Chancellor has been a great friend and mentor to Anakin. I can't imagine he is happy about this.
No, he's not. So perhaps it's best that you do speak with him.
But I think Obi-Wan Kenobi already understands that Ahsoka Tano is really the only person that can convince Anakin to do this. Because of his authority-based relationship with Anakin, I don't think Obi-Wan would have pulled this off. Remember, Anakin's main motivation is to protect and serve the individuals that he really loves. Obi-Wan Kenobi does not need Anakin's love or protection. He does not depend on Anakin for anything. So when he gives Anakin an order, it's not something Anakin likes to hear. But when it comes from Ahsoka, he's almost inclined more to take her criticism seriously, and that's because that's what a good Jedi Master would do. It's this protective instinct he has over Ahsoka Tano that makes their relationship more functional than the one he has with Obi-Wan. Eventually, Ahsoka would find out about the relationship between Anakin and Padme, just as Kenobi did. Ahsoka, being a more independent thinker, I think would be okay with this arrangement. She likes both Padme and Anakin, after all, and would want to see them both happy. Even without the Temple bombing framing happening, I think Ahsoka and Anakin both harbor thoughts about leaving the Jedi Order because it just didn't fit either of them. And so when Ahsoka finds out that Anakin and Padme are together, I don't think she'll be judgmental at all. I think she'll just give them her congratulations. And that's all Anakin ever needed, not non-stop criticism from the Jedi Order. He just needed some acceptance, some support, some words of encouragement. Now, when Anakin finds out that Palpatine is the Dark Lord, this information is extremely shocking. He's not only found the Sith Lord the entire Jedi Temple has been looking for, he's also uncovered that the Chancellor of the Republic was that Sith Lord, and that Sith Lord was his mentor and friend for the longest time. It was really good timing for Palpatine to reveal his true nature because all of the people that Anakin might have trusted were not with him. Obi-Wan Kenobi was on Utapau, Yoda was on Kashyyyk, and Ahsoka was on Mandalore. Now, because Ahsoka never gets framed for the Jedi Temple bombing, she'll be on Coruscant still and pretty close to her master. And I think when Anakin finds out about Palpatine's true nature, he'll go to Ahsoka before anyone else, rather than just go to Mace Windu. I mean, Anakin would have to eventually tell Mace what was happening. He was the highest ranking Jedi left on Coruscant. But what would change is that now Anakin won't have to sit there all alone and wait for Mace Windu to confront Palpatine. And that's because Ahsoka Tano would be there to support him. I think once Ahsoka has all the information, being an outsider who's not that emotionally invested in what's going on, she can clearly see that Palpatine is manipulating Anakin. And his ultimate goal was to use Anakin's love for Padme to convince him to go to the dark side. It's such an obvious Sith trap, but you guys know how love can be. It can completely blind you and force you to do impulsive and stupid things like cut off the arm of that Jedi Master who's always a dick to you. This is why it's dangerous for Anakin to be by himself during this period of time. No one is here to challenge his views or help him talk through the situation that's going on in his head. What Anakin really needed was someone to remind him that the Sith were kind of evil and all they did was manipulate people. This is not an organization that was focused on the art of saving lives. Instead, it was all about destroying them. All Anakin really needed was a friend, someone that he could trust to basically tell him what was going on. Use simple words that were not spurred on by ego, but by a genuine concern over his mental health and what he was going to do in this scenario. Humans, to Grutas, we are always stronger together with our friends. That is what is most important in life. It's more important than money, force abilities, all the powers you can have in the world. Anakin Skywalker at the end of the Clone Wars had been completely abandoned and left alone. He was isolated and easy pickings for Palpatine. Lastly, the abrupt betrayal of Ahsoka Tano by the Jedi Order during the bombing incident also shook Anakin to the core. Not only was it shocking to see someone like Barriss Offee turn against her fellow Jedi and friend, the lack of care and compassion that the Jedi High Council had for Ahsoka made Anakin see the Jedi for what they really were. I'm sure this would go on to weigh in on his final decision to cut off Mace Windu's arm and accept Palpatine's view of the galaxy. So as you can see, Anakin Skywalker did not turn into a Sith Lord overnight. It took a lot of work, a lot of deception and manipulation behind the scenes. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. As usual, my name is Alan, reminding you that my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy.